Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. This week, we are delighted to welcome, by popular demand, no less, Tim Rodie. Tim Rodie. He gets a bit insistent about that, even though it's spelt Roddy, I'm pretty sure. Tim is a car journalist and road motorcycle rider who is currently transitioning into an adventure rider. Lots of folks suggested we talk to Tim, and we are very glad we did. This is an excellent chat, and he seems like an excellent bloke. I think you're going to enjoy this one. Let's get on with it. It's funny because we had people messaging us saying you should get Tim Rodie on.
It's Rodie. I have to stop you there.
At some point, I am going to call you Rim Toddy because that's what it says on your screen. So we got literally several people message us, and it sounds like you had the same thing, right?
Yeah, I had people saying, "Oh yeah, you got to go on this podcast." I'm like, "What podcast?" "Oh, the Adventure Motorbike Podcast." I'm like, "I'm not an adventure bike rider. I've got an MT10 outside, but I made this discovery over Christmas." I'll rewind a bit. I'm a car journalist and a bike journalist. I've been riding for 16 years on the road exclusively. I've done a few bits of off-road stuff. And then last October, I got an email from Becky at ABR Festival saying, "Do you want to come and give a talk at our festival next year?" I'm like, I'm a fraud. I've never been to ABR Festival. I'm not a muddy person. And then over winter, as you do, you go down these wormholes on YouTube, don't you, when you can't really ride your road bike. You start dreaming about this alternate life that you want to live next year. You make all these resolutions about what you're going to do on two wheels. And I start thinking, I can't turn up to the ABR Festival in an MT10 SP with like sticky tyres on it. I'll just look like a right knob. I've got stuff I want to talk about when I'm doing my talk. I want to talk about my history, military history tours that I do on two wheels. How about I do those tours next year on the TET? And do it off-road and get a bike to do it on. And I'm in this weird position. We'll get onto this, I'm sure, when we talk about big bikes, small bikes, what's best, blah, blah, blah. I'm in a weird position. I can only have one motorbike at a time that I own. It is a self-imposed rule, but also it's a parking situation rule. So I need one bike that can do all of these things. What do I get? And if people watch my YouTube channel, they'll see that I'm going down the rather inevitable cliched wormhole of becoming a middle-aged man on a T7 falling off. So that's the plan. Hopefully I'll be turning up to ABR Festival in June to talk about Nazis and stuff on it. I don't know if they're actually... That's not going to be the title of the talk. But I've got some good jokes lined up about Nazi megastructures in the new GS Adventure. That's the plan, and it's gone a bit mad. So I've been living with a Tenere press bike for a couple of months, the Tenere Explorer, absolutely drowned it in puddles, filled the airbox up with water because it's on stock tyres, and basically learning what not to do on a green lane in January.
Did you just blame your tyres for falling in that puddle?
Yes, I did.
You're already an adventure rider, well done.
It was about 1/2 metre deep, it was overly exhaust, but 2 weeks before it, I went through it on a Triumph Scrambler 1200, the low one though, not the real off-road one, and I made it through. So I then went through standing on the pegs like a Tenere hero and promptly binned it, and then had to awkward phone call to Yamaha because this bike had about 25 miles on it. And they're like, "Oh, the drain plug for the airbox, you might want to find that." And then several frogs came out of it. And I thought, this is fun. I'm enjoying this a lot more than wobbling around on damp roads on a bike with 165 horsepower. I just get it now. I think it's because I turn 40 this year, so I'm blaming that. And it's just the sense that I've been riding on the road for 16 years. I seem to do the same thing every summer. I go to the same bits of France, same bits of Germany, same roads. I love it, but I don't get that enjoyment in the UK riding on the road. I live in Surrey, so everything that used to be a 60 limit is now 5 mile an hour. Something like that. There are police everywhere, quite rightly. I live very near Box Hill, Rikers Cafe, and every weekend, first sunny Sunday, or every sunny Sunday, there are absolute knobs out there doing their darndest to give motorcyclists the worst name possible. Took my daughter to gymnastic lessons on Saturday, outside a secondary school in a 30 limit. 18 blokes, mostly in those slow boys hoodies, on litre bikes, one of whom overtook the group on the back wheel in this 30 limit on the wrong side of the road. And I was like, I don't want to be associated with people like you, so I don't ride on them.
Good skills, though.
Yeah, good skills.
Undeniable.
And they did a little endo into this small child, and everyone applauded. I don't ride at weekends, and I just want to do something else.
Bearing in mind you've just got back from 3 probably magnificent days in Morocco, are you at the stage of your adventure riding where you think, why the fuck didn't I start this 10, 20 years ago?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know why. It never really crossed my mind. Yeah, I got into biking like most people because their dad. My dad used to have bikes, and it was always road bikes. He had various awful bikes from a Yamaha Virago, which was his born-again biking just after I turned about 10. He gave up bikes and he had kids and got back into it. Then he took me out on a Sprint ST 1050 when I was at uni. I had a poster of a Rocket 3 on my wall in halls at uni. And then he did an accidental uncontrolled power wheelie with me on the back, and I'm like, okay, I need to get into this. That was it. I didn't grow up on motocross. I didn't grow up on enduro stuff like everyone else that's good at this stuff seemed to have done. I was out in Morocco, absolutely probably the second slowest person in a group of 30 journalists, absolutely cacking my pants. It was type 2 fun at times. Then it was epic. It was amazing. Out there 3 days, it was 33 degrees. We rode one day. We did about 100 kilometers on the normal Tenere and then about 90 kilometers on the Tenere Rally, the new Rally. And that was all off-road on the Rally. And we were just going through the desert and all these pistes, a little bit of kind of wadi, sandy stuff, which is where I found myself with 205 kilos pinning my left leg to the floor, which was quite entertaining. I had to get a photographer to come and help me up. Went up a few little sand dunes and things, but it was mostly just trails through villages, up to the mountains, just seeing Moroccans going about their lives with toddlers helping them build houses and that kind of, I guess everyone that's listening to this has probably been to Morocco, but just the incredible dichotomy coming out of Marrakesh of incredibly poor donkeys carrying stuff around and then someone on a local plated Audi Q8 worth about 100 grand just blasting past all of them. I'm like, this is mad. But yeah, sorry, I kind of went off topic there. Yes, I should have got into this a lot sooner.
What was your journey through motorcycles? What was your first bike? And what was your first memory of riding a motorbike?
I feel like such a millennial cliche because I know the correct answer to this should have been I bought a really cheap two-stroke and spanned it myself, but I didn't. I'm shit at mechanics. I financed a Triumph Street Triple. As a fairly poor journalist earning 16k a year writing magazines for Butlins, this was my best choice. Obviously, they didn't let me test ride one because I passed my test the day before. But it's at Ongar Motorcycles outside Chelmsford, which used to be run by the grumpiest man on earth called Alan. But he took me outside with a fag hanging out of his mouth and gave me the key to their demo and just let me rev it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, let's sign the finance papers. And that was amazing. I did my first track day on it at Cadwell Park 6 months after passing my test. Absolutely crapped myself and then realised I was way too big for it. And the most comfortable upgrade from a street triple would be to get a Daytona 675, which fit me better. That's why I did my first tour on that. Tent strapped to the back, panniers. I just got the bug. I think did 3,200 miles in 10 days with some mates. One was on an S-Rad, one was on a street triple. Just camping around Europe, Italy, Austria, kind of south of France. And I just absolutely got the travel bug, the two-wheel travel bug of being able to turn up pretty much unannounced at campsites, dumping your bike in the middle of a city and just enjoying the smells and the sights and the sounds of Europe. And I think in those 10 days, my riding moved on about 3 years. It was just an intense learning period of not getting shit scared on downhill hairpins and just having a great time. Then after that, got a speed triple. Then after that, I run out of money, so I had to stop financing bikes. I realised that was a bad idea when you're earning about 2p an hour. Got an old Honda Blackbird. That was epic. I had some great rides on that bike. It was 3.5 grand. It was one of the fuel-injected ones. I remember doing an indicated 182 on the Autobahn with my first GoPro on my helmet. But I didn't know that they had to go on your chin. So it was on the very top of my helmet, like a little bricky sail. And I had a tent on the back. And the vibrations from my GoPro was so high frequency that my eyes looked like I was just in a washing machine. I'm like, I can't see anything. That was an epic bike. And I remember very fond memories of waking up at a campsite in the Black Forest near Titisi, best named place in the world, and then hitting the B500, which back then didn't have the speed limits it does now. And I just remember going around corners at 140 miles an hour. The sweepers on a Blackbird, it was heaven. It was so stable. It was so planted. And then I sold it. Got Ducati Multistrada after that. My first adventure bike, which I knew was going to ruin me financially because they go wrong in really big, impressive, expensive ways. Mine didn't. It was perfect. I did amazing tours through Spain on it. Absolutely loved the upright riding position. The fact that it still had a fairly unadulterated 1198 superbike engine in it. That's the first bike I ever dropped. I sold that to a young lad who was an EasyJet pilot, who was about 5 years younger than me, and this was baffling. He bought it, he was very happy with it. It'd been perfectly reliable in the year that I owned it. And then he started it to ride it away with a handful of throttle open, like an old bike. And that confused the hell out of the throttle position sensors, and it just broke as he was going to leave the house. So I ended up paying $1,000 to fix that for him. And then he kept in touch and told me it cost him a further $4,000 that year to fix it. Oh, then I found out I was having children. I'd given up biking for a year. I was about to have my first child. This was 2018. So my girlfriend said, oh, I'm pregnant. I'm like, oh, I need to do a motorbike tour because my life's about to end.
Amazing foresight you have.
I know, but yeah, we'll get on to having kids and motorbikes because all of my friends were forced to give up and I judged them heavily for it. So I bought a new touring bike for my last tour. So I bought a Ducati 1198S with a tank range of 80 miles.
Not really a touring bike, is it?
It was great. I had Krieger luggage on it. I had a tank bag. I had to stop every 100 miles maximum because it had a tiny fuel tank. It fit me. It was comfortable up to a point. It cost me $2,000 a year in maintenance to run, and it fell over once in the wind, which is a pattern of my bikes. And turns out Ducati plastics might as well be made of like Tutankhamun's foreskin or something. It's just absolutely ridiculously expensive. So then I grew up after that, and I bought a Hypermotard 950. It's my COVID bike because I couldn't go far. Lots of lanes around here are all 40 limits, but on that, 40 is fine, and every crest just becomes a little jump. And then after that, I grew up again and bought a KTM 1290 Super Adventure. So I started going back to adventure bikes. I did take that green laning once, and I thought, this is fine until there's a patch of sand, and then it's very quickly not fine with a 19-inch front. What did I go after that? MT10. I think it was the MT10 after that. My enjoyment of motorcycling has always been the riding. I don't care about going to cafes. It's absolutely not my scene. It makes my skin crawl a bit. ABR Festival is going to be fine because there's riding and beer and no one walking around in one-piece leathers showing off their face tattoos.
You'll learn to love cafes because you'll need a fucking rest.
I could have done one in Morocco. Yeah, 3 days of tagine. I was gagging for a burger.
I always love when you go to Morocco and the first night there, somebody comes out with the tagine and there's a big da-da.
Oh, Moroccan tagine.
And you enjoy the tagine, and then the next night, da-da. by the fifth night, you're like, yeah, we skip the da-da. We can just.
Do you have anything
coming.
else? Honestly, anything else? I was chatting to the guys from Yamaha Europe who've been there for 3 weeks running this event. Have you had the same food every night? They're like, no. One night's chicken tagine. The next night is meat tagine. The deliciously anonymous meat.
So at some point then, you've turned from Butlins brochure writer to car journer. And I want to understand the journey from brochure writer to working with Top Gear and Clarkson and those people. That sounds quite interesting.
I'll go back to when I'm 13 because I've got some evidence of this. You know, when you're at schools.
So Clarkson was employing children, was he? I knew he was a bastard.
We've seen Caleb on his farm. No, when I was 13, I did one of those pointless career interviews that everyone does at secondary school at some point where they tell you that you can be an astronaut. I told them that I wanted to be a journalist because I love reading magazines. I love reading car magazines, but mostly computer game magazines. I'm a proper nerd. I wanted to go and write for PC Gamer or something like that. So I always knew I wanted to be a journalist, and I did an English degree. I knew I wanted to do a postgrad as a journalist, so I did that. I did a postgrad journalism thing at Harlow College. I've always been quite lazy. Everyone in my journalism postgrad course was getting work experience at like Elle magazine or Vogue. And they're like, Tim, you doing work experience during the course? I'm like, no. I'm mostly dicking about my mates playing computer games in the evenings. But I did get work experience at the very end at a magazine agency in London, and they gave me a job. They were a customer publisher, so they kind of convinced big companies to spend their marketing budgets on custom magazines. So we did magazines for IKEA and City and Guilds and Butlins. Kind of wrote Butlins brochures, and Butlins used to have adult weekends. But for that, I got to interview Madness and all sorts of other people who were performing at Butlins. Jerry from Jerry and the Pacemakers was perhaps the most miserable person I've ever interviewed. And all this time I'm like, this is good. I'm getting a grounding in journalism, but I want to move into cars. I eventually managed to get a job. This is possibly the most boring sounding job anyone's ever had. Running websites for Skoda and Volkswagen, but for their dealers. So not public-facing websites. So if someone in the head office of Skoda in Milton Keynes says, oh, we want to tell the dealers to, knock 500 quid off Fabia's this weekend, I would write that because they would obviously say it in this kind of weird business jargon. It was turning them into like actual English that people might want to read. So I did that for 2 years, got a company car, and basically used that as a way to drive lots of cool cars on the side. And then I I went for an interview and got a job at this new startup, which no one had heard of, called CarWow. And I left and my boss was like, what the fuck's CarWow? Like, that's not going to amount to anything. What are you doing? I was employee number 7, I think, at CarWow. So this is really early days. There were 7 of us in a shared office in Holborn in London. And the recruitment company only employed like beautiful blonde women and was owned by this very lecherous man. And they were all very lovey-dovey, but we had a sales guy at CarWow whose job it was to get car dealers onto the platform. And if he had a bad phone call, he would put the phone down and shout at the top of his voice the word used for a forced sex act. This didn't go down very well. We had to move office fairly quickly. I ran a team of car journalists there as their head of editorial for a couple of years. I have to be slightly vague about some of the details here because I could probably get into legal trouble. They employed Matt Watson to come in and do their video.
The Birmingham guy, isn't he?
That's definitely one way to describe him. Yes, he came in and made a great success of YouTube. We tried to work together for 2 years and then I departed the business. I think is probably fairest to say. And then I was looking around thinking, oh shit, what do I do now? And then Drive Tribe approached me, which was this website that was famous for being backed by Clarkson, Hammond and May and Andy Willman, the producer from Top Gear and the Grand Tour. And they decided they were going to build Facebook for cars. No one told them that that's Facebook. It was a great idea. And it's, thousands of users posting on there every day about what they're doing with cars and motorbikes, blah, blah, blah. So I managed all of that and at the same time became a car journalist properly, really. I've been reviewing cars at CarWow, but while I was at Drive Tribe, I noticed they had a motorbike section. And I thought, we've got millions of people on our website every month. That's going to be bigger than MCN or whoever. So I started talking to motorbike PRs about reviewing bikes and they all said yes. And then I suddenly found myself in the weird situation of having like Ducatis delivered to my house by Cal Crutchlow's dad, who was the delivery driver at the time. It was all a bit surreal. Although in car journalism, I'd got to meet my heroes, Clarkson, Hammond and May. More on that later. For me, my real heroes growing up were the bike journalists. Your Al Fagans, your Michael Neveses, and so on. And I was suddenly on bike launches with these people. And I was trying my best not to fanboy. But they're all so friendly that it just didn't really matter after a while. And during COVID at Drive Tribe, the CEO, who was an utter madman, but very lovable, said, you're going to get bored because you're not going on car launches and stuff anymore. Why don't you start a YouTube channel? And then you can do it during work time as long as you give the revenue or some of the revenue to the business back to Drive Tribe. So I'm like, okay. So I started 2. I started a car one and a bike one. That's where it started.
That's Tim Rodie Rides Motorbikes.
Yeah, it's Rodie. Sorry, it is Rodie. Everyone says, is this nominative determinism?
I'm looking here. It says Rodie.
Well, it'd have 2 Ds if it's going to be Roddy. It'd be like Noddy Holder.
Right. And Tim Rodie drives stuff, which is presumably
that's the car one. Yeah, I couldn't come up with a better name than just Ron Seal. And then Tim Rodie Rides Motorbikes is the other one.
You must have spent a lifetime correcting people over the pronunciation.
It's pronunciation, yeah, not pronunciation.
So we've spent a good few minutes here introducing you, saying who you are and what you've done. We've got about an hour left now to do what we normally do and to tell you why you've made a terrible decision on the bike you've just bought.
For reasons that we'll get into, I'm pretty sure I've bought the right bike. The right bike to buy would have actually been a KTM 890 Adventure R because I like KTM. But I'm not buying a KTM right now with my own money. Sorry, KTM. I love you, but not that much.
I can see you getting a KTM because you don't care what bikes look like, and that's quite important if you have a KTM.
Yeah, my old 1290 had the little radar thing here. It just looked like some alien cow. Not a looker.
But I did go back through some of your videos that I'd already watched, and
I'm sorry.
I couldn't find the bit I was looking for, and I hate to admit it, but I may have been dreaming about you, Tim, but I thought you said at some point on one of your videos, I ride big road bikes, I've got lots of experience, my current bike is 160 brake horsepower, so I can ride a big off-road bike. Now, did I just dream that, or did you say that?
I don't think I said that, because that sounds like someone with an ego has said that. And my ego is the smallest you'll ever find. I have no strongly held opinions on anything, least of all my own abilities on 2 wheels.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Mental Health Motorbike is a free mental health first aid support charity for the motorbike community throughout the UK. We exist to create meaningful and purposeful opportunities for all bikers so that together we can grow the well-being of the biker community. We do this through one-to-one and peer support, events, training activities and projects, working in partnership with the industry, organisations and clubs. When life gets tough, we are here to support, to listen, to ride, to get some support. You can find more information at mhmotorbike.com. I freely admit I just might have dreamt that, because that's the kind of thing you quite often get with the people that are moving on to dirt bikes. But also I sent you a link to the small bike versus big bike. Did you listen to that one?
I was listening to that, yes, this afternoon. I thought that was very interesting. With Ollie and Jason, HB2 Mav, who are clearly correct in everything they said, because who wants to ride a CRF 250? I've got maybe 40 years left on this planet. It's like, why would I fucking do that? It's like motorbike. They say they move the soul, but a CRF 250 barely moves the body.
I think we might need to record that one again. No, they actually made some fairly good points, really. But one thing you definitely did say, you were worried about losing 100 brake horsepower.
Yeah, I'm not now. No, I've been to Morocco and fucking stacked it with 72 horsepower. It was nothing to do with the power. It's to do with the lack of skill.
You don't want that much power off-road,
No.
do you? Because you can't. You want traction is what you really want.
Yeah. No, exactly. Big skids only get you so far. On the whole kind of adventure bike rider versus road bike rider thing, last Friday I was lucky enough to go to the Yamaha off-road experience. Spent a day with Dylan Jones on T7s trying to get me up to scratch for Morocco. They were saying, chatting to him and his dad, and they say the worst people we tend to be the people who are really experienced road riders. They've done their IAM and they come here and they just think they know it all. And for me, the one thing I've learned from doing that day in Morocco, it's starting again. It's back to your CBT. You know nothing. You know nothing, Jon Snow. But on motorbikes, because I'm like, I don't know how to stand up. It's like, why are my legs on fire after 90 seconds of riding this motorbike? Oh, it's because I'm bending my knees and basically doing a shit squat. It took 15 minutes of tuition from Dylan. I'm like, okay, I'm 110% better at this now just from being able to stand up right. But we were saying, people who buy motorbikes seem to be allergic to taking training. There seems to be a thing, I don't know if it's ego or whatever, but, it's mostly blokes, isn't it? They just don't seem to want to learn. They think, I've got my license, I'll get my own experience and go and learn. And I think if you're jumping onto a 220 kilo bike and taking it to the woods, that's a terrible idea. I've proved that. I've chucked Tenerés into ponds and things like that, and it gets dangerous. So why would you not go and do some training? Because it makes it a lot more fun as well. Sorry, mild rant. Where were we going? I've bought the wrong bike.
But then you've got very, very specific reasons for buying that bike, because you want to go and do your tours through France and Spain, and you want to put the big miles in, and you want to go and ride some tet, right?
Only being able to have one bike. I've got to find that point in the Venn diagram where I can do the big road miles, but also take it off-road. Yes, I could do it on a big GS, but my beard's not quite grey enough yet for that.
We've got our good friend Will, who has a very strict one-bike policy. He's made that journey from GS 1200, which, to be fair to him, he did used to trail ride. He then got a 790 KTM, which fortunately he sold before he did 25,000 miles on. And he's now on a 690 KTM. But he also has a trials bike, which doesn't count, apparently, in the one-bike rule.
No, well, trials bike, you can basically keep in a cupboard under the stairs, can't you? So it doesn't really matter. You can hide that. I was going to ask a more experienced person, it sounds like him, where you end up, like where you drift down in capacity to kind of be able to do those road miles and do the off-road stuff. Basically, where's the compromise that suits you? Because I ended up looking at KTM 690s and the Husky 701s, and I just thought, I don't know if I want a single for the miles that I do, no matter how smooth they are these days. But also, what if I hate it? The Teneré is reasonably affordable in the scheme of things, so I won't feel too bad if I either destroy it or don't like it. But I think I'm going to like it because I always talk about this in my videos. Motorbiking has so many different flavours. It's buying Neapolitan ice cream in the 1990s. I think you probably still get it, can't you? You just get you get a bit of everything. They're all slightly shit actually, Neapolitan ice cream. It's not like proper Waitrose gelato. All the flavours are good. I've done a bit of trials, tiny bit of trials. Obviously road, bit of track. Motorbikes are just fucking great. Don't gatekeep them. Go and try each one and enjoy them. That is the plan.
See, I think you've kind of hit the crux and I'm doing a signal with my
Here's the church, here's the steeple,
open the doors, and
there's someone being sexually assaulted.
Is that not a watershed?
I don't know what a watershed is in reference to my fingers.
Where the rivers start going in different directions, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
On that side, you've got off-road bikes. On this side, you've got road bikes. And I think at the very pinnacle of where those two lines meet, you've got the T7
Yes.
on the road side, and you've got the 690 on the off-road side.
That is very good.
Very good.
Yeah, do you see what I'm saying? You've gone slightly road bias instead of the 690 or the 701 would be slightly off-road bias.
Yes, I think you're right. Whatever I do, I'm going to have to do 1,000 miles of road to get to wherever I want to get to in Europe, probably. Not 1,000, but still. I don't want to be worried about road miles.
This is the endless dilemma, isn't it? And I fully understand why you've got a T7. I hear what you're saying, but I think to ride a T7 on the TET is quite an undertaking. I would be quite daunted by that. I'm an amazing rider. And I've ridden lots of TET, especially in France and stuff. And the thought of doing it on a T7, I would be scared to death doing it on a T7. I'd find
You're a aren't you? Because you're 60 nearly.
Yeah.
Tim is a comparative.
He's an agile, virile.
Neither of those things anymore. Not since the NHS saw me last year.
You've got to be pretty good to handle a T7, I would say, on the average TET standard of track.
I'm definitely not good, but I can be confident when I need to be. And also, I won't be doing it on my own. So I'll be doing it for a friend who'll be on an F900 GS. We'll muddle through. We're not going to be doing big days. We're just going to go down to Poitiers because there's some places where the SES got executed. That seems to be the theme of my videos. There's some World War II history, shall we say, that I want to go and see down there. And the TET quite handily leads down that way. Yes, I've been searching YouTube in the TET Facebook pages, trying to judge what these sections of the French TET are like. And to be honest, it looks like a lot of what I've got around here in Surrey. There's some chalky bits and some muddy single track. But northern France looks like lots of open fields and a few odd hard bits by the look of it, which we can always skirt around, but it gets a bit too daunting.
You won't be alone because certainly if you go to ABR, bigger bikes from memory outnumber smaller bikes.
Yeah, that's what you were saying on the Big Bike, Small Bike episode about ABR. And it kind of stands to reason, doesn't it? Because lots of people kind of have this compromise. But even if they've got a garage and can have loads of bikes in it, there's a fair chance that they're going to be riding on the road most of the time. And I guess it depends how close your local lanes are.
I've been away with people on my little CRF 250, and I've been away with a couple of people who are fantastic riders, and they were on 701s, and I had a much easier time.
It's just how knackered you want to get, isn't it? There's just no way I could have an enduro bike in my current situation. We'll see if I get fully addicted, get a new house, loads of parking. My tune will probably change, and the Tenere will be getting turned into a Street Fighter V4, and I'll get a 250.
Have you had a chance to ride a bigger and a smaller bike back to back?
Not back to back. So the only real enduro bike I've ever ridden was a Fantic something or other, because I live in Dorking in Surrey, and there's a place here called Off the Curb Trail Riding, who for 200 odd quid will kind of take you for a day to a pub via lots of green lanes, guided. And that was on I think it was a 250. I found it really easy. I'll be honest, I found it really easy. I was like, I don't really need much skill to get through any of this. So I think part of me does like the challenge of the heavier bike a bit as well. And it helps that I'm 6'3". I think that massively plays in my favour, just being lanky. Though that said, I was in Morocco with Carl Stevens, who's a good friend from MCN, who's raced everything. Well, he's raced like Ducati 899s and things. And he's a bit of a demon off-road as well. He's about 5'6". And just seeing him ride a Tenere rally, getting off and on it with complete confidence. I'm like, you bastard. You're meant to be shit because you're short and you're not. But you find out lots of motorbike journalists, because they're not like car journalists. Nearly every motorbike journalist has been a racer at some point, and their level of talent is beyond us mere mortals, even as failed racers.
I think we've got a bit of a treat and a challenge for you. Our friend Rupert almost hardly need to leave Dorking in a way to get there to start off with. So our friend Rupert created a thing called the Circle Line.
Oh, yeah.
He made a video of it, and he's created a route. It's like the M25 for off-road bikes.
Ooh, where does it go?
It goes all the way around London. So he uses the TET as much as he can, and then he's basically mapped all the other lanes that you can link together. So you basically Kent, Surrey, Hampshire, Berkshire, and then those other counties north of London.
I can try and do my tip and fib in every county in southern England. That sounds like a good challenge.
I'll send you a link to it. I think it's called The Circle Line on YouTube, and it's a guy called Rupert Jordan. So you've met the Top Gear crew then. Would you say Noel is very much like James May, like most people seem to think?
Me and Noel haven't had a conversation about the pros and cons of the Spitfire wingtip design yet. So I didn't have much to do with Jeremy Clarkson. He came to the office for board meetings, and as their head of editorial, I tried to avoid him knowing that I existed. I did a lot of filming stuff, hang out with James May, and a bit less with Richard Hammond. James May is just exactly what you'd imagine. So funny, so interested in everyone on the crew. If you're doing some filming, he'll chat to anyone. And me and him would just end up completely distracted talking about motorbikes. I actually did an episode of the Drive Tribe podcast, which I think is on my motorbike channel, one of the oldest videos, and it was an hour-long chat, and basically the premise was we weren't going to talk about cars at all because he's bored of talking about cars. He's been doing it his whole life. So we talked about motorbikes for a bit, but then spent about 35 minutes talking about Second World War aeroplanes, which is great. I was sitting there with this setup in the room upstairs being like, yeah, the Messerschmitt 163, that was the rocket powered fighter, which the fuel was so corrosive that they had to land it on a skid, and the fuel tank would often rupture. So by the time the ground crew got to the plane, when the pilot didn't get out, there'd just be a skeleton sitting in it.
You make James May sound really nice and really interesting, so not really like Noel at all.
Yeah.
Why do I think James May is a Moto Guzzi man? Is that true?
He did have a couple in his big garage. I bumped into him at a festival I went to last year for my second favourite podcast after this one, called We Have Ways of Making You Talk. It's a Second World War podcast hosted by comedian Al Murray. They have a festival, and I went to it last year near Silverstone. There's lots of history talks in tents, lots of beer, Spitfires and tanks there and stuff. It was great, but James May was there giving a talk. I went and forced myself upon him and said, hey, we should do a motorbike video together, talk about that. And yeah, I don't know if he's doing much biking anymore. As he's getting older, I think he's starting to sell off his bike collection, so I need to go and find him before he has got rid of it all. I've got video of me and him setting fire to one of his motorbikes on my phone because I was helping him reconnect the battery on some classic Honda. I was holding a terminal while he was screwing it in with one of his favourite screwdrivers, and then someone was filming it on a phone for some reason, and then suddenly loads of smoke started coming up. I'm like, oh, interesting, James May diagnosed this mechanical problem. You've put the battery on the wrong way around. He had a weird collection of bikes. He just kind of bought odd things that he liked, mostly Japanese. I think there was definitely an old Guzzi and a Ducati in there as well, but he just never had time to ride them. Same with his cars, really. I was never sure on YouTube mixing Second World War history and motorbiking whether it would ever work. And then a couple of years ago, I did my first YouTube filmed tour on my KTM, and I always go to the Vosges Mountains, border of Germany, so opposite the Black Forest, the Alsace region. Absolutely love it. And the reason I go there so much is because I've got two young girls. I can't fuck off for a week without feeling really bad. All my tours are kind of like Thursday to Monday maximum. Just want to go there because it's a day's ride, epic roads. And then I started realising there were all these sites that I just wanted to stop riding and look around. So it's these First World War trenches in the mountains. It's not like the Somme or anywhere like that. It's in the mountains, dug out of the rock, and they are pristine. They're still there. You can walk around. All the German trenches have still got the steel firing loopholes with the cutouts for their rifles in. You can stand in the trenches and see what they saw. And the French trenches were just dug out. So they're still there, but fading into the landscape. There's this one German bunker that's reinforced with railway girders, and it's a machine gun bunker, and it's pointing down a French trench that is 1.5 meters away, just straight down it. Oh, I love this. I've always loved history, Second World War anyway, and First World War. So I went back the following year on an M1000R that I borrowed from BMW and just filmed it, and I'm like, this is motorbiking. This is what you normally come to watch on my channel. Me mostly ignoring French speed limits because they don't matter anymore. Only upside of Brexit. Sorry, I'm stopping and I'm going to show you this stuff. I don't know if you're going to watch it, but there's stuff that I'm interested in walking around some First World War cemeteries. I found that the Venn diagram of people that like motorbikes and the people that are kind of into Second World War and stuff is not a circle, but it's not far off being a circle. Men of a certain age.
Yeah.
Who are just fascinated by this stuff, who grew up on The Great Escape and A Bridge Too Far and can now go and see the reality, the real places where this stuff happened. I'd love to do it as an organised thing. I think Nazis and knee sliders or something.
You've thought about it, haven't you, already?
In the past 5 seconds, I have, yeah.
Inglorious Bikers.
Oh, no.
off the top of my head.
Amazing.
Fucking hell.
I've got loads more where that came from.
This summer, you're going to be combining your love of First and Second World War history and motorcycling and doing some Trans-Euro trail riding.
Yes, in 6 weeks' time, which is slightly worrying because I've not sold my MT10 and my Tenere is not here yet. I've booked the ferry, going over to Cherbourg because it was slightly cheaper than Caen. So we'll whittle down just on the road through all of the kind of the Normandy tropes, which I've never done on the channel. So kind of like Saint-Mère-Église and all of the Band of Brothers stuff, and then hop on the Tet and go south to Poitiers. However long it takes to get there, really. Hopefully not too long. And the reason I want to do that is because of a thing called Operation Bull Basket, which was 1944. D-Days happened, but the SAS were kind of twiddling their thumbs. They ended up kind of getting parachuted into this area to basically piss off the Germans and to stop them sending troops up to Normandy. They ended up camping out in the woods, essentially with the help of the locals, and had all these run-ins with the Germans. The SAS would have like jeeps with machine guns and would just drive at top speed through villages, and there would just be like the SS forming up for inspection in the morning, and they would just drive through and gun them down and then piss off. And then eventually the Germans got wise to where they were, and then the SS mostly got surrounded and shot down in the woods. A few escaped, lots were captured. Because of Hitler's commando order, any SES people that were captured were not to be left alive. So they were executed in various places, and there's memorials to all of this stuff out there. And it's all on the Tet, and it's all in kind of woodland and stuff as well. So that's the plan, to go and to press the fuck out of people on YouTube.
Is this a well-known story I've not heard of?
Not really, no. There's lots of kind of these kind of little operations that happen, but because they weren't Saving Private Ryan, the first 45 minutes of that, in the common perception of the Second World War, it was basically the war started with Saving Private Ryan, then Band of Brothers happened, and then at some point A Bridge Too Far happened, and then Downfall happened when people were making memes about Hitler screaming at people in his bunker before offing himself. So apart from that, there was no Second World War. It was just that last year in Hollywood history. One of my Instagram followers very kindly sent me some links to some very good books on this with GPS references for all of these things as well in the book. So you can go and see exactly where the SAS set up an anti-tank gun and exactly where they rolled a Jeep over and all this kind of stuff.
I'm not sure who it is I follow on Facebook, but I see quite regularly the sort of the then and now photographs. I love seeing those.
Same.
The guy with the machine gun crouched behind the statue in the town centre, and the more obscure ones where they've just identified it from just the stones on the corner of a house. They're amazing, aren't they?
There's a very morbid one I saw the other day of, I think it was in Cherbourg, which was obviously at the top of the Normandy, Cotentin Peninsula, which was actually like liberated after quite a big fight. And there's a photo of this kind of, he steps up to a house, this little alcove, and it's just a young German lad just slumped there, dead, just there, exactly as it is today. And it's like, fucking hell, like how many people walk past this and just don't realise the history of it? And that stuff absolutely fascinates me. But Teneres are great.
Are you going to get a chance to actually get some more practice in before you go? Because training is great. Everybody should get training, as you say. It's that whole thing. The training will give you the knowledge of what you're supposed to do, but until you turn it into an unthoughtful skill, and you only really get that by practice, right?
No, exactly. And I was saying to Dylan Jones about this, like, it feels like it's just like road biking. It took me 4 years of riding 5,000 miles a year on the road to get anywhere near good in the corners, the confidence. And I'm fully cognizant of the fact it's going to be like that off-road as well. You just need miles and experience. Unfortunately, I'm out of time now. I leave in 6 weeks and I've got a lot on until then. And as I said, my Tenere is not here yet. Basically, as soon as it's here, I've got to try and run it in, change the tyres and get it prepped for this trip, which is going to be tight. But it should be fine. Everything comes out in the wash.
What kind of luggage have you got on it?
I'm just going to sling some of those Krieger soft bags on the side, the smallest ones I can get away with. I've got a Krieger T18 rucksack, which they very kindly sent me last week from Morocco because I needed a camelback from Morocco. So I'm just going to keep it as light as possible. 2 pairs of pants, and then there's camera gear, which I have to have. They've just put a blue plaque up on my local Waitrose, which I realise is the most Surrey thing I could possibly say. I'm actually from Essex, despite the voice. I'm like well Essex, innit? That's where Tilly Schilling used to live. And Tilly Schilling was a motorbike racer in the 1930s who then worked for the Royal Aircraft Establishment in the Second World War. And as we all know, when Spitfires, the early Spitfires with the Merlin engines, put their noses down in a dogfight, it would starve them of fuel and the engine would cut out. So to keep up with the fuel-injected Messerschmitt 109, they had to roll on their backs and then dive to keep the engine running. Tilly Schilling, of Waitrose and Dorking fame, invented a little disc which was a restrictor plate that they put into the carb somewhere, so that when they put their nose down, it didn't cut out. And she's now got a blue plaque in Dorking Waitrose because it was the 1940s and sexism was great. They called it Miss Schilling's orifice.
Tilly Schilling sounds like a porn star from the 1930s.
Name of your first pet and the road you lived in.
I was teaching my two young girls who are 4 and 6 about this, she was a great engineer, and I looked her up. She had a gold badge at Brooklands, which you got if you had done a lap averaging 100 miles an hour on a motorbike. She got it in the mid-1930s. During the war, someone proposed to her, and he was an RAF pilot or something like that. And she said, I'm not going to marry you until you've also got a gold badge at Brooklands. So he went off and had to do a 100-mile-an-hour lap at Brooklands.
Have you thought beyond this summer trip to France? Or what?
A little bit, because I'll be doing one in September. I've got time in September as well to go and do something like this. And I might kind of head more Belgian woods, maybe do this Maginot Line thing. I won't have heaps of time, so I won't be going down to Morocco or anything like that. But I've certainly got ambition to go and do some of the Dolomites at some point, just because it looks absolutely stunning. I'm addicted to Adam Riemann. I'm such a basic adventure bitch right now, going through all of his YouTube videos, just thinking, oh yeah, I can totally ride like that. No.
I think you'd really love that ride along the Belgian border. The Tet's really, really lovely along that section.
The thing about the Tet, looking at the Tet, and I know it's quite basic to be really into the Tet, I've spent 16 years filling my Google Maps with little heart icons and favourites, places I want to ride to, roads that I know are good. And I've built up this fairly good mental map of where I want to ride road bikes in Europe. And there are certain countries I just don't bother with. I don't bother with Switzerland because of the speed limits. I don't bother with Belgium because the road surfaces might as well be like, I was about to say my granddad's arsehole, but that was a bit unfair on him. Having the Tet there just means it doesn't matter. It's opened up new countries that I would just gloss over, ride straight through. It's given me more opportunities to stop and just have a nose around, really. Kind of like go through their countryside and drink their beer. If that doesn't sound like a good time, I don't know what is.
Really struck me when you said that you spent so much of your motorcycling career not standing up. That standing up felt so unnatural.
And it also, because I'm 6'3", I'm like, Dylan Jones, like, you're going to find this harder because it's going to feel like you're really far from the ground, which is kind of true. It's like stand up's like, oh yeah, this is quite scary. It's like when you sit on your parents' shoulders as a kid, it's exciting but a bit scary. But also, if I'm trying to keep my legs in the right position, I have to hinge at the hips an awful lot. And then by the end of my 6 hours riding in Morocco, I needed a new back. So I need to try and get some core muscles there. I've joined the gym. That's my mission for this year. I didn't go to the gym last year at all. And I weighed myself after Christmas. And I'm like, holy fuck, I've put on a Halfords Professional tool set in weights. The big one with the ratchet spanners. I need to get rid of this. So I've lost 5 kilos in the past 5 weeks. Given up hobnobs, that's it.
Do you think you'll be doing much trail riding in the UK?
Yeah, I'm going to try. Again, I'm slightly time constricted and weekends are a no-go for me because I've got kids. So it's whatever I can manage during lunch hours and, the odd day off here and there. I definitely want to. And Salisbury Plain's really high on my list because I've been around there when I was at university because I was doing TA stuff at university. So I've kind of spent many cold nights on Salisbury Plain, but I've never ridden across it. Lots of it looks nice and easy, which I like the sound of because for me, I was saying this riding on some of the easier bits in Wales, it's just like, there's just something I love about being out in the countryside and taking it all in on 2 wheels, knowing that you got there yourself and just kind of enjoying the view without having to put walking boots on and pretend that you like conversations with others.
See, I told you it'd be good, didn't I? A massive thanks to Tim for doing that. What a lovely, genuine, funny bloke. If you do see Tim at the ABR, be sure to go and say hello. Make him feel welcome to the adventure and trail motorbike community. And I'm sure he's really keen to listen to you at great length to tell him why your CRF is actually the best bike for the job. And I'm looking forward to catching up with him, either to tell him I told you so, or maybe just to watch Noel eat his shit open face piss pot helmet. All right, that's it for this week. See you next time. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.